Hi guys, Hengist here from House of Hengist Comics, and a big welcome back to the channel. Old and fresh beans to the battlefront. Today it is Blitzkrieg, episode 29, part of the Skyblitz series over Holland, Moerdijk part 2. First our weekly news segment, and we can see here all the parachute and air landing operations between the 12th and 14th of May are coming to fruition, and the whole of Holland is covered in parachutes. We've got basically airstrikes, strategical bombing. We've got the Belgian frontiers around the Albert Canal overrun, King Leopold in trouble, his army basically withdrawing, the Allies, especially the British, moving nonplussed up against all these refugees as bridge after bridge is being detonated. Explosive rounds are all over the countryside from bombs or artillery, and the Dutch are trying to close these bridges as we hear the engines of the Ju-52, the Tanti Ju, basically dropping a huge number of parachutes all along this corridor. And if we look a little bit closer today at the map, you'll see here in the north at Ippenberg and Ockenberg, Wassenaar and Valkenburg, loads of operations, especially around the airfield, and we'll get to that. But in the south, 9th Panzer is racing on Moerdijk, which you can just see in the south corner. We've got Dordrecht and Walhaven, which are up to the north as well, coming up. But a lot of aircraft are being destroyed, especially the air landing, subject to artillery. The Dutch are counter-attacking. And overall, at Dordrecht, there's a massive operation as well against these bridges, as we can see here. But ultimately, it will be Rotterdam that will suffer the wrath of the Luftwaffe. But let's now get into effectively what happened previously in the last episode. The drops were made. There were lots of problems though, however. We had 9 platoons dropping on Moerdijk. It was on a compressed battlescape that we had to build, and that was slightly problematic, but a lot of anti-aircraft fire brought down aircraft. In fact, they lost 3 aircraft and a lot of crews to determine Dutch defensive fire. And as we can see in this photograph, there's wreckage now all over this landscape as well. But they've managed to basically push forward and attack the Dutch defensive position and are closing in on the bridges. There have been problems with the containers, but as the paratroopers basically get on, they're putting down a lot of suppressive fire. Bold assaults have been led by paratroopers armed only with pistols and collected rifles, and their machine guns now are beginning to give covering fire as they basically move into Moerdijk itself and chase upon the bridges. No sign of the ferry yet here at the ferry port, and the customs house, that's also very, very quiet. But at the farm, there's already been intensive action. And we can also see from the irrigation dikes, the paratroopers are subject to artillery fire, and also they're basically being shot at as they try and get close. They've taken some prisoners, but the Dutch to this point have put up a great and resolute defence. So without further ado, let's get into the battle action, guys. We rejoin the action with the Falschrimjaeger advancing towards the bridges, as we can see here. This is the Dutch position and their perspective. As you can see, there are a lot of Falschrimjaeger. They come under artillery fire, those that are closing in on the bridges. And Schwarzman is at the van, basically. He's got a lot of fire down on that trench line, and he's proceeding to attack. But at the farm, we also see that the Dutch who've been driven out have now got 3 pin markers and are suppressed. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Lem continues to move his troops up towards the bridge. He isn't engaging the enemy on its flanks, whilst 3rd Platoon of 8th Company proceed to make an attack against those heavy machine guns. They're still trying to basically collect their canisters, which are a long way back, so part of this company hasn't got its full weapons as the weapons platoon move up at a pace basically to catch up with the infantry, and 7th Company now push forward vigorously against the hotel. We also see the battle now take place with the assault between 2nd Platoon, which is assaulting, and they drive off the Dutch in the farmhouse, pushing them back and effectively killing the command team. There are only 3 teams left. They are suppressed and now leaderless, so they've got real problems for them going forwards. Ultimately, we see Schwarzman make his assault. His sniper takes a crack shot and basically destroys the anti-tank team and suppresses that unit in the ditch. Schwarzman then leads a bold assault. 3 teams have been destroyed, The Dutch counterattack quite brilliantly. However, it is not going to be their day, because basically the Falschrimjaeger drive in and take the fortifications in front of the bridge. This is followed up by elements of 7th Company hot on Schwarzmann's tail, as Lem moves up, continuing to double down the railway track towards the railway bridge. Meanwhile, the machine gun platoon has been destroyed and overrun by elements of 8th Company. And the anti-tank team now drop their guns and pick up their carbines in the town. We continue to see the occupation now of the entrenchment position. That infantry platoon is compelled to surrender, and the Germans are now all over the bridge like ants, basically moving on to the control tower, taking prisoners and moving forward with rapidity and aggression. And they continue to push, trying to break the company now against this last little Dutch platoon without a command. But they stay and stick it out as Lem arrives on the bridge really hastily, setting off the artillery transports which are now running pell-mell across that bridge. When all of a sudden the strangest thing occurs. The Dutch commander surrenders. Yes, the Dutch surrender. And the Germans look somewhat incredulous. There are still 2 infantry platoons in the town, but Schwarzmann's on it quickly and takes the surrender really amazingly fast, runs up the flag and decides to escort the prisoners into captivity, some 60 or 70 Dutchmen. And this basically causes some concern amongst the Falschrimjaeger, because they get now the opportunity to move 3 tactical moves and redeploy to face an oncoming attack, which they do. The surrender didn't specify anything, and the guns were taken intact. So now the Falschrimjaeger have built up a defensive line with 2 captured artillery pieces. The village still hasn't been technically cleared, and the Dutch now counterattack with 4 platoons, and they're arriving behind the railway station, and they move forward really quickly with a very aggressive Dutch commander who's pushing his motorbikes, the recce teams, up towards the farmhouse which has been taken and now is not occupied. And the Dutch know their mission. They've got to basically recapture that bridge, and they're moving forward with great elan. Their first card, a patrol boat, one of those little Wach ships, appears basically between the bridges and starts to maneuver in and begin to open fire. They've also got aircraft, 2 fighter Fokkers that come in, fighter bombers, and basically start an attack going towards basically the trench line and those captured guns. They're moving with great aggression and diving out of the sky, strafing as they do, killing 4 men in their attack before they bank and break off. The little Wach ship closes with the enemy, opens fire basically at Lem's men, and then basically displaces back underneath the bridges, its little engines whirring at overspeed. We now see the village, which is quite quiet, but the Dutch are now effectively moving forward as quickly as they possibly can. Time is a key. They lay artillery which fires down onto the advanced positions of the Falschrimjaeger, but the Falschrimjaeger get air support, much to their cheers, and 2 ME-109s are above them as their heavy machine guns open fire. Their sole mortar brings down a bombardment and basically catches some Dutch in the irrigation canal. The ME-109 basically has its sights on the little Fokker, brings down its cannon and machine gun fire, causing some damage, but she breaks away as the ME-19 banks and basically comes round again, the other beginning a strafing run against the railway. The Falschrimjaeger at the village stand quiet. The patrol boat comes in again for its second attack, but this time Lim's waiting. He's lost 4 men and opens fire. He's determined, and it's basically shot to pieces, and she goes down. Meanwhile, the bikes have arrived at the little farm, and they now basically begin to prepare for an assault and an all-round defence as the fighters again that have evaded the 109s come in and shoot. The 122 battery that opens fire, misses the bridge. They're trying to blow the bridge now as the Dutch press towards Lem's position right down on that railway track. They keep moving with impetus, but they're now under constant ME-109 strafing attacks which are split between the fighters and the ground. The 109s though just can't seem to shoot those Fokkers down, and basically we see the Dutch infantry moving up through the irrigation canal, but the Germans are conducting an excellent defence, folding back, manoeuvring, firing and getting back into the town, which is a better bastion for them, as the civilians now finally just managed to run off the board. Schwarzmann's been recalled by one team. He then takes that team and to join his platoon. He leaves 8 men to guard the 80 prisoners and moves into the village. But the Germans are folding back really nicely. They only lose 4 men against concentrated fire. It's a really good maneuver as their ME-109 once again comes in and strafes upon the railway segment. The artillery, that's trying to fire, but it's just can't range in. There's low ammunition problems for it as the Dutch move closer and closer towards the railhead. However, at the ferry, Schwarzmann decides he's going to take the last objective point before he joins his comrades and moves down towards the customs house. As he's doing this, the artillery finally managed to fire and basically get 1 round in, which effectively, again, pins the Dutch. But they keep unpinning and moving forward on those irrigation dikes, pressing now on 2 vectors against the town and against the bridge. They've got more troops up to the farmhouse, and as you can see here, they're quite concentrated. They haven't got to fear too much artillery, and the aircraft have run off, and their spotters are bringing down good fire. It's intermittent, but it's good, and when it is concentrated, it's doing a lot of damage. But they've got to split it between the bridge and supporting the infantry complex. The last fighter run once again goes down, and this time strafes again the irrigation ditch. That's the threat of attack, that's the vector. The artillery again in their last round basically put that down on the Dutch and effectively pin them. But what we now see is basically the Dutch unpin and proceed to make forward. They're going to assault as Schwarzmann moves onto the ferry, no sign of it, takes it, gets the glory, and the Germans have now fallen back into Moerdijk and are fully protected. The Dutch are closing, they can't do a lot, they're really under a lot of stress, but Schwarzmann suddenly, as he's coming past the customs house, is ambushed by some engineers that hadn't been cleared special card. But he plays human shield. This actually happened in the historical event, and that protects his platoon, as unfortunately the Dutch have fired and several Dutch civilians are shot down in this encounter. Schwarzmann basically takes full opportunity of this and decides to assault, and he drives in and destroys those pioneers. They were only conscript, but they did their best. We've got smoke now landing in the final stages of this battle, basically, as the Dutch now proceed and decide to assault, and they're going to assault the edges of Moerdijk. They've got 2 platoons there, but the Germans have moved forward into great firing positions. There's like a huge amount of firepower and casualties going down left, right and centre to the Dutch, and they are pinned. It required 7 pins, 18 dice rolled. They were unlucky, but they are repelled, and the Falschrimjaeger hold in this sector. At the bridge, although they're smoked, fire is still coming through, and effectively the Dutch can't effectively pursue and decide to withdraw. It's a German victory, guys, by 40 victory points to the Dutch's 10. But what can we say in postscript? This was really challenging to put on, a great game. We really enjoyed it. As the Dutch have walked off into captivity, the bridges are basically, the demolitions are being removed. It wasn't wired up because the bridges were needed as an extract point basically for their frontier forces to retreat across. With the bridges open, this is basically the Germans and the 9th Panzer can start moving up. We haven't done the north part, and we'll be doing that in the next sort of episode, but the Dutch are retreating on the Greb line, and we've got problems here also because Schwarzmann was to receive the Iron Cross first, second, and then the Knight's Cross. He didn't want it apparently, but Goering intervened, and ultimately he started swanning around with it, which didn't go down well with the rest of the paratroopers. We've got a lot coming up in the next few episodes, guys. We're going to be doing some battles on the Grave line as well, because that's connected to Moerdijk. We're also going to be looking at further jumps in and around Dordrecht, air landing operations and parachute drops in The Hague, and obviously at Rotterdam on those airfields. We're going to have French forces from their 1st Division counter-attacking. And we really need to remember all the fallen in these type of operations. It was heroic, but the Dutch were to take very heavy casualties. Those pioneers actually fought really well in their history, and their commander was decorated. So always take time to remember the fallen, guys. Stay tuned and enjoy what we're doing. Stay safe, and best wishes. Until next time, it's over and out.